My introduction to video games came with a system that I'm sure many of you also started with, the Nintendo 64. Imagine me, a young 7-year-old boy sitting around his mother's room, when suddenly she just walks in with this strange-looking device. Saying she got it from a friend of hers, she doesn't know what to do with it, but decides to give it to me. I had no idea what a video game even was at this time, so I stared at the odd-looking gray box with awe and amazement. I grasped the controller in my hand, a see-through purple N64 controller. I didn't quite know how to hold it. It had 3 grips. I had no clue which was the proper way to use them. Then my mom decided to plug it into our TV and turn it on. With a cartridge that read Pokemon Stadium printed on the front, snuck safely into the cartridge slot. Once that screen began to flicker, my 7-year-old self could not contain the joy on its face. Yep, the Nintendo 64 is the cornerstone of my childhood. I have played this system more or for longer than just about any other I've ever owned. This console was, in fact, the start of my love for Pokemon, and video games in general. Starting with Pokemon Stadium, my appetite grew hungrier and hungrier for more. The graphics of the game were extraordinary, breathtaking even to my little mind. I became hypnotized. The gameplay itself helped with that too, of course. After all, I was used to playing card games with my sisters, or maybe Scrabble or Uno with my parents. I never thought I could be using a piece of plastic to make a 3D creature on a screen duke it out in battles. Stadium threw me headlong into the onslaught that was the N64, and I would continue to fall even further into the abyss. My next love came from Pokemon Snap, a rather laid-back sort of game that has you go around in different areas on an island and just take pictures of Pokemon. Though it seems a bit too simple nowadays, it was so enticing to see these creatures I battled with in Stadium basically come to life and move around in ways that an actual animal in our world might. It was a great game to just sit back and enjoy the ride with. But my heart longed for more. I wanted something else to satiate my explorative side. Something that could make me feel rewarded for going off the beaten path and finding new things to do. And even finding my own way to do those things. Yes, I wanted to collect. And the best game I've ever played that gave me that experience was Banjo Kazooie. Yes, I know, it might be a bit surprising that Super Mario 64 wasn't the first N64 game I played, but I had never seen it until years later, actually. Instead, my drive to collect things was satisfied and then some by this rareware classic. Banjo Kazooie is one of the most entertaining games I've ever played, from the whimsical world design to the interesting characters, unique abilities, and of course that super catchy soundtrack. It was something so much different than the games that I'd played up to that point. But I knew this wasn't going to stop here. I decided to branch off into other, less explored games. I came across a collection of games that a different friend of my mother's had brought over one day, after seeing I had an N64. In this box were several games that, to this day, have still left an impact on me. Starting the pack was, oddly enough, a Star Wars game. Star Wars Shadow of the Empire. Now, I've heard over the years from Star Wars fans that this game is actually pretty bad, and doesn't follow anything canon to the Star Wars universe. Now, I don't quite know the authenticity of this statement, seeing as I've never seen the movies myself, and to me, to be honest, it didn't really matter. This game was the first to ever show me what a real challenge in a video game could look like. The example that comes to mind instantly is the trek through the sewer level, where you had to navigate through a disgusting passageway of sewer systems that ends with a battle against a giant underwater, or under poop, anemone monster thing with giant tentacles. Definitely a hard fight, at least at the time. But the fascination continued with probably the biggest game on the system next to Super Mario 64. And that was... Yes, another bit of a curveball. Most fans of the Nintendo 64 will agree with me in saying that Smash is a very important title, but would then follow up by saying that Ocarina of Time is far more significant. And yes, while I do agree with that, I can't personally feel the same way, since as with Super Mario 64, I didn't grow up with that game either. Nevertheless, Smash was my first introduction into the fighting game genre, and good lord was it memorable. My best friend, who's basically my brother, introduced this game to me when he began swinging more into the PlayStation corner of things. And we played this game a lot as kids. I managed to unlock every single character and spent hours of my days just sitting around, swinging around with Pikachu, and kicking people with Captain Falcon. Ah, those were such amazing times. But as you could expect, my passion continued. I needed more, so I decided to take a brief stint into other oddball games. Clay Fighter 63 and a third, where you battle as weird clay monsters in sort of a Mortal Kombat style almost. Xeno Warrior Princess, which is kind of a little bit similar to Clay Fighter, although it is a little tiny bit more 3D. I guess I could compare it more to the Clash of Ninja series for the Naruto franchise. And Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, which, to my knowledge, is the least popular Batman game I've ever seen. If you check its reviews on, it's pretty abysmal. But these games would all lead me into rather odd places of the N64's library. But there were two final games. Two in the many years of my video game life that changed everything. Not to be too dramatic, but these games were the sequel to my first two games I ever played on this wonderful system. Pokemon Stadium 2 and Banjo-Tooie. Good God, these two games. Since Pokemon is my favorite, let's start with that. Stadium 2 was gifted to me by my mom after months and months of prodding. I finally got her to buy it for me for my birthday, but I was so impatient that I begged her to give it to me early. Which thankfully she did. And man, as soon as I got my hands on it, I did not let it go. I played Pokemon Stadium 2 so much that I would actually skip school just to stay home and play it. If mom and dad wanted me to sleep, I played Stadium 2. If they needed a chore done, I played Stadium 2. If I got grounded, I played Stadium 2. I managed to beat every single challenge in the game without ever using a Game Boy Color Pokemon game either. And man, was it fun every single time, although a bit tedious in the later half. This game would eventually push me into the main series of Pokemon with my purchase of Pokemon Coliseum for the Nintendo GameCube. But I'll talk more about that another time. Finally, there was the game I could never have, Banjo-Tooie. When I'd first heard of this game, it was from a neighbor kid who lived a few houses behind mine. He mentioned to me that he owned the game and invited me in to play it. His father, however, was so strict about anyone entering his home that he forbid it for months. Eventually, his dad gave in for one day and let me in to play it. I walked into his garage, plopped down on his overly sized beanbag chair, grabbed the controller, and went to town. All of the new items, the new abilities, and new worlds, with all of the stuff that made the original game so great, just made me in awe of this fantastic title. Even to this day, along with Pokemon XD Gale Darkness and Metroid Prime 2, this game sits as one of the best sequel games that I've ever personally played. But alas, I didn't own a copy for quite some time. Not until after I'd already had my GameCube, in fact. Long after, I unfortunately had to sell my first 64. But my older sister was kind enough to buy me a new one Christmas, and with it, she had a copy of Banjo-Tooie as well. Now, after playing the game for years since then, I still think it is incredible, but I have to put it a peg below Banjo Kazooie, primarily because of the increase in difficulty, which has kept me from beating the whole game, even today. But, even with all that, the Nintendo 64 was quite a strange system, but one I couldn't live without. These are just some of the amazing games that belong to this weird phase of Nintendo's history, and for me at least, they'll always have their own spot in my own history with video games. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this sort of look through my journey with the N64. I do plan on making videos on this for every Nintendo system I've ever owned, but the next one for the GameCube will take quite a while, as I have the most experience with it specifically. But that will be for next time. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and support me on Patreon if you really want to help me out. Also, check out my Let's Play channel as well. All links will be in the description, but anywho, that's about all from me. I'm going to start working on the GameCube video, and I'll see you guys next time. ZDS out.